From our earliest days, humans have been searching for a magic potion, a key to trigger sexual desire. From chocolate and oysters to sweat and pheromones, anything will suffice in the quest for the ultimate aphrodisiac. While enticing a mate can be a formidable skill, for many, having sex need not always lead to having children. Birth control and aphrodisiacs. One brings us closer together, the other stops nature from consummating the union. Dim the lights, light the candles, let the music fill the room. These are some of the rituals we've designed to invoke a visit from the goddess of love. The Romans named her Venus, the Greeks Aphrodite, and her power to unleash desire was divine. Humans have tried virtually anything and everything to lure Aphrodite into our midst. And in her honor, we call these concoctions aphrodisiacs.
People around the world have wanted to find aphrodisiacs. They not only have love songs and love magic and love potions, but all kinds of incantations, anything that they can do to try and turn on somebody who's not interested in them and get them excited sexually.
One popular belief passed on for generations is that aphrodisiacs earned their reputation simply because they were shaped somewhat like sex organs. So cucumbers, bananas, oysters, and artichokes were believed to be what fired up our sex drive. Take oysters. They're rumored to give lovers a jolt of sexual energy. And zinc is involved in the body's production of testosterone, which kickstarts the libido in both men and women. But in order to get any boost of testosterone, you'd have to eat buckets full. The scientific search for aphrodisiacs goes well beyond the kitchen. For North Americans, the quest for love can be expensive. We spend over $5 billion a year on perfume, a manufactured aphrodisiac of sorts. Our reliance on the sexual power of scent has been with us for a long time. Bob Francoeur is a biologist and author of The Scent of Eros.
Smell is the most basic form of communication. Smell is sensing, knowing that there is something out there that's not even touching you physically, but I know it's there and it's sending me messages.
For men, genital odor is an aphrodisiac. That's why we have pubic hair, to capture that genital odor so that it is appealing, because for men it's a turn-on.
In fact, smell is a fairly common way of communicating sexual interest. In the animal kingdom, when it's time to mate, many species release chemical signals, also known as pheromones. These invisible chemicals indicate to others the time is right. In most mammals, this is how sex pheromones work. Take the pig as an example. When a female pig gets a snort of sex pheromones in a male pig's breath, she arches her back, offers up her backside, and waits for the inevitable. Behaviorists call this a fixed action response. Free will doesn't even enter into it. One whiff of boar breath and the female pig is primed for sex. Until recently, it was believed humans weren't influenced by pheromones. But a team of scientists at the University of Utah believe we are influenced by pheromones, and there's an organ in our body that allows this.
We have at least two separate sensory organs in our nose for detecting chemicals that we breathe. One of them is our familiar sense of smell, which we use to enjoy the food that we eat. But that doesn't appear to be the organ that's responsible for receiving pheromones. Rather, there's a separate system in the nose called the vomeronasal system that's connected to the brain with a different nerve pathway that goes actually to a different part of the brain that does not have conscious awareness. So when we are stimulated by a pheromone that we receive, we may not be consciously aware of that, even though it has that effect in the deeper parts of our brain.
Is this?
Jennings White and his colleague Dr. Louis Montibloc are working to prove we all have essentially a sixth sense, one which triggers the drive to mate in animals. Take the gypsy moth. By releasing a blast of sex pheromones, the female gypsy moth can attract a potential mate from over 3 kilometers away.
So far, we don't really know whether there is such a thing as a sex pheromone in humans. Now, it's quite possible in humans that we have such a thing, but it's also possible that we don't. Nobody has yet discovered this.
Can you make it?
This is precisely why the team in Utah is trying to map the vomeronasal system and pinpoint the chemical messengers.
We already identified 24 compounds with the characteristics and properties of human pheromones. There may be more. Our mathematical estimations indicate that there are possibly 100 or 150 compounds.
How humans produce pheromones is still up for debate, but every indication points to our skin, the largest and most complex organ of the human body. Crowded together in a single square inch are about 39 million cells, 32,000 sensory bodies, 650 sweat glands, and 98 sebaceous glands. The most important pheromone factories are the armpits. Their sweat glands mix together a concoction of attraction agents. Every time a bead of sweat evaporates from our skin, we emit an invisible army of pheromones.
Pheromones in humans, we found, are mostly odorless. You cannot touch them, you cannot see them, you cannot smell them, you cannot taste them.
At rest, we breathe in almost 5 liters of air every minute. That air can be loaded with pheromones, some of them potentially influencing our sex drive. The pheromones touch down on the recipient's VNO, located about an inch or so inside the nose. The organ's opening is a tiny cavity near the bottom of the septal wall. A matching opening sits on the other side.
Indeed, human subjects, all of them, do have a pair of vomeronasal organs in the nose. It is tricky sometimes. You have to know where to look.
Montibloc found that from this little dimple, a tube-like passage extends into the organ, almost like an ice cream cone. From here, a tangle of nerves connected to the hypothalamus and limbic systems of the brain.
So this is where feelings begin to arise that we perhaps don't really know quite where they come from. So for example, if we are with an individual who's giving off a particular pheromone, we may start having feelings about being with that individual as a result of that pheromone interaction.
One of the chemical compounds successfully isolated by Jennings White is androstenedione, a pheromone released in men's sweat.
We found that this particular molecule, this pheromone, has an effect in women, but really not much effect in men. So this is a pheromone that transmits a message from a man to a woman.
Not exactly the sweet fragrance Aphrodite would have dreamed of. But humans are known for employing virtually anything imaginable in the pursuit of sex. The The legendary Spanish fly is made from the crushed carcass of the blister beetle. We now know it's poisonous and causes burning bladder infections. In comparison, sweat doesn't sound so bad. Once the pheromone from the sweat is isolated, its vapor is fed through a specially designed tube and probe directly into the VNO. Monty Block studies have shown the VNO reacts as quick as lightning to a whiff of a pheromone.
And all the volunteers reported changes in mood and behavior. They felt more relaxed. They felt more comfortable. Their heartbeat were more slower, more calm. Their muscle tension decreased. Their body temperature slightly increased.
While the pheromone didn't cause the patients to become hot and bothered with desire, it did create a feeling more conducive to intimacy.
It has an effect on women of essentially reducing their negative emotions. So it would make women less nervous, less tense. And while such change in feelings are not in of themselves a sex effect, you could conceive that if you're feeling less nervous and less tense, you might also perhaps be more open to a romantic involvement.
The discovery of human pheromones and their potential influence has spawned an entire industry of pheromone-based fragrances, many with outlandish claims.
There are some products on the market that do have the real human pheromones, and these are not direct aphrodisiac pheromones. These are the ones that cause a reduction in negativity.
So these scientists tend to steer away from using the term aphrodisiacs.
Pheromones in humans may play a very important role preparing both genders for sexual behavior, but not in the explosive way that you see in animals.
Many other scientists agree that pheromones communicate something, but they're not convinced the messages are sexual. This controversy adds to the scientists' passion to decode the messages in our blood, sweat, and semen. So next time you're washing your face, you may want to consider the invisible army of chemical messengers you're washing down the drain. The source of passion is one of life's last great unsolved mysteries. Lust can't be bottled and sold. At least, not yet.
When I stop and think about aphrodisiacs, I don't know of any except the one between your two ears, your brain.
Scientists are learning that we're all born with the ultimate aphrodisiac hidden inside our heads. Helen Fisher is an anthropologist trying to decode the brain's natural recipe for love.
The brain is a series of chemical cocktails. For example, when you fall in love, you can feel very elated one moment and then extremely depressed the next moment when you discover that the person doesn't like you. And one would expect the cocktail of chemicals in the brain associated with this range of behavior patterns is going to change rather dramatically.
In our brains, there are chemicals called neurotransmitters. One of their roles is to allow us to connect sex with love and romance. According to Fisher, that twinkle in your lover's eye may actually be sparked by an overdose of these neurotransmitters.
These are chemicals in the brain that are natural stimulants that give you sort of the elation and giddiness, sleeplessness, loss of appetite that is associated with romantic love.
The power of these in-house aphrodisiacs was discovered by accident.
For years, we've seen patients with Parkinson's disease and treated them with dopamine, and many of them would come and say, Jesus, you know, not only do I feel better, but I'm a little more sexual.
A lover's touch, erotic imagery, even a smell will trigger the release of dopamine in the brain, bringing with it a rush of pleasure. Then there are the feelings of warmth and intimacy, Those are prompted by serotonin.
I'm currently doing a project on the brain in which I hope to establish that romantic infatuation, romantic obsessive love, is associated with high levels of dopamine and norepinephrine, natural stimulants, and low levels of serotonin, a natural calmer of the brain.
So if dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin are involved in the processing of desire, can we develop a chemical recipe to influence attraction?
The day may very well come when we will know what the chemical cocktail for romantic love is. The day is never going to come when we can use this cocktail as an aphrodisiac.
You can blame this bad news on the complexity of the brain. A prefab concoction won't stand a chance against the memories and personal chemistry we all carry.
In fact, if you gave this cocktail to a man or a woman, she may well turn around and fall in love with her dog, or fall in love with her former boyfriend, or fall in love with somebody at work. So we may know the chemistry of this passion, but we're never going to be able to direct it one way or another.
While the mysteries of the brain continue to elude us, there does seem to be one thing that acts as a surefire stimulant.
Scientists have really begun to discover that there is one true aphrodisiac in both men and women, and that is testosterone.
Testosterone is the sex hormone, responsible for desire in both men and women.
Patients who take testosterone, either to feel better or to boost their sex drive, say that in about 36 hours, they begin to have more sexual thoughts, more craving for sex, and more sexual fantasies, and in fact, they can also have more orgasms.
Testosterone declines with age, and so does libido. Many postmenopausal women take testosterone to boost their sex drive. Even Helen Fisher sampled some testosterone cream. All in the name of science, of course.
On Monday night, in the middle of the night, it did begin to kick in. Not only did I get a jolt of craving for sexual gratification several hours later, but I also acquired an unending admiration for the troubles that teenage boys have.
We know that testosterone is important in men and in women in producing libido, and we don't know if it's a conditioner or a facilitator. So it is still a mystery of exactly what causes it. We know what can influence it, and hormones are probably the largest class of drugs. If we give estrogens to a man, he'll lose his libido as well. And if we give testosterone to a woman who has a less than normal libido, her libido may improve.
But before you start panting in anticipation, too much testosterone can result in aggressive and irritable behavior. And when it comes to desire, pure testosterone means pure drive. Think of a dog in heat and the ensuing chaos.
Testosterone is never going to be used as a love drug. It can be used to increase a woman's or man's craving for sexual gratification, but it will never be used as a chemical to make somebody fall in love.
One traditional role of aphrodisiacs is to keep the necessary parts functioning at their very best. Our hunt for potential pick-me-ups spans millennia. Ancient erotic drawings illustrate how Chinese emperors were burdened with the responsibility of satisfying hundreds of concubines in order to pass on the royal blood.
It's really a tremendous amount of work for emperor to perform in that way.
Special doctors worked in the palace to ensure the emperor would be able to perform sexually. The result of their work was centuries' worth of experimentation with herbs designed to keep the emperor's love fires burning.
And a lot of so-called secret prescriptions in the palace, and then help them to stimulate their sexual desires and to prolong their sexual activities.
These secret prescriptions helped provide the basis for an Eastern medical philosophy covering the treatment of sex.
The function of ginseng is to enhance the whole body's energy.
Ginseng has been used for over 5,000 years as a source of virility and energy. Tests on lab rats show that when ginseng hits, it hits below the belt.
It really can increase their weight of a testicle and also increase the activities of sperm.
But ginseng may not always be enough.
When you have impotence or when you have a low sexual desire, it doesn't really matter to male or female. Basically, we believe one of the factors, the circulation is being cut off in the reproductive system.
That's why many Chinese medicines aim to increase blood flow all over the body. It's an ancient approach, one that was recently reborn as Viagra. By simply popping a pill, a man can increase the blood flow to his penis. But Viagra is just one of many sex-enhancing drugs.
There are a couple of other drugs being studied now that work in different areas. For example, there's a drug called apomorphine, which is thought to stimulate the limbic system of the brain. We notice this when we give apomorphine to rats. It improves their interest in sex as well. And now this has been formulated and may be released in the next year or so.
Whether it's candlelight or Viagra, hormone injections or fragrant perfumes, ultimately we're just taking part in the primordial hunt for aphrodisiacs.
It's normal for people who want to improve pleasant experiences. I think there's a demand to make the sexual union more fun and more pleasurable, although I don't know how it could be much more pleasurable for two people who love each other.
Though we're hardwired to have sex, procreation is the driving evolutionary force. Sex without any protection or birth control is a surefire recipe for babies and for potential diseases as well. Birth control. It's been with us for thousands of years, and you'll never imagine where it's headed. In the game of unprotected sex, when you bet against the odds, at first it looks like the gamblers actually come out ahead. For many women, there are only a few days a month when they can get pregnant. This window of opportunity hinges on ovulation, or when the egg bursts out of the ovary. While the average woman is born with about 400,000 immature eggs, it's only in puberty they begin maturing and are released about once a month. In preparation of receiving a fertilized egg, the endometrium of her uterus thickens and becomes enriched with blood. If the egg isn't fertilized by a sperm, the uterine tissues, accompanied by blood, are discharged by the body, and a new ovum starts to mature. The process will repeat itself month after month until menopause, giving an average woman about 400 menstrual cycles in her life. Each time a couple has sex without using birth control, there's only a 3% chance pregnancy will occur. The odds seem pretty low, so why all the fuss? Well, calculated over a long period of time, odds are that 1 out of every 33 times a couple has unprotected sex, it can result in pregnancy. In other words, after a year of no birth control, the sexy mama in your bed will likely look like this.
For females, not having effective birth control can definitely affect their sexual responsiveness. If she's lying there thinking, oh man, I hope I don't get pregnant. Oh God, I could be ovulating. Oh man, I hope he pulls out in time. I'm sorry, that's not pleasure. That's torture.
Birth control can take the lust out of lovemaking, but if you don't want children, you may not want to go without it. Making birth control sexy is a hard sell, and in certain situations, many would risk spontaneity and passion over prophylactics any day.
He's disqualified. Have you ever tried to hide an erection?
Well, if it can't be sexy, educators can make it straight and simple.
kids try douching all the time. That's the one that you wash out the vagina after sex and you wash out all those sperm. Forget it. Sperm are faster than you are.
Sue Johansson is a sex educator and talk show host who tells it like it is.
Pulling out, that's the one where the guy says, "Hey, babes, everything's cool. Don't worry, hon. I'll pull out in time."
Teenage females tend to be more fertile than older women. That's because their cycles are more regular. But regular cycles don't necessarily mean a better chance for becoming pregnant. Whether one cycle is regular or not, pregnancy is always a possibility. So some educators want to make sure teens know their options. Johansson's approach is frank, a far cry from the messages she received about birth control as a student.
We were taught by a priest that condoms had to have holes punched in them to give sperm a fighting chance. Wasn't until my kids hit teenage years that I realized, too, that these kids don't know a great deal more than I did when I went through training, and I don't want that to happen to my kids. I don't want them to have a baby every 10 months like I did.
When it comes to birth control methods, adults in the Western world have many options. Often, a simple rule to follow is, no glove, no love.
If I had my way, every young male would be given a 12-pack of condoms and told to go and masturbate with them on. Then you get used to the sensation.
Although a recent study called the condom's value in preventing disease into question, the condom is probably still the top choice.
Condoms were developed then to prevent sexually transmitted diseases such as syphilis and gonorrhea.
In the Renaissance, birth control was much less of a worry than venereal disease.
There was in the court of Charles II Dr. Condom, who recommended the use of animal intestine condoms. These were made from sheep cecum. This is the intestine of a sheep. So what he recommended was to cut the end of the cecum and put that over the man's penis.
Animal intestine condoms are still manufactured today. They're a good option for people who are allergic to latex. If you can find them, that is. Many drugstores no longer carry them. Studies have shown the HIV virus can pass through the small pores in the intestine. Though the pores are too small for sperm cells to get through, they're big enough for viruses and bacteria. So for safe sex, latex is the #1 option. Thanks to the development of vulcanized rubber in the 1850s, our sex lives have become markedly different.
Even as we get into the 30s and the 40s, here's an example of a condom that really is quite thick. It's almost the same consistency and texture as a rubber boot.
New technology allowed for the mass production of rubber condoms, and even a chance to toy with the minds of the enemy. The story goes that during the Second World War, the condom was an Allied war tactic.
In order to prevent salt water from getting into the guns of the soldiers that were landing, they had to place condoms over the barrel of the rifle. Because this was wartime and it was latex, they had to go to Winston Churchill to get permission. And Winston Churchill said, the only way that I'll permit it is if you take the largest condom manufactured in England and stamp it small, just in case any of our soldiers are captured by the enemy.
Today, the majority of condoms are still made of latex rubber. Glass molds are dipped into vats of liquid latex, dried, and then dipped again. Then the condoms are checked for holes and their ability to withstand pressure. They're blown up with more than 25 liters of air, stretched out, and filled with water. Though latex is extremely stretchy, it doesn't stop some men from complaining.
As you can see from these models, one size doesn't fit all. It's like us saying that women should all be able to wear the same size bras. I mean, this is a tight-fitting condom here, and this Magnum, as you can see, is nice loose. It's like a little baggie there. If someone's thicker at the base of the penis, then this might be uncomfortable and in fact may stretch to the point of breaking.
Consumer Reports studies have shown that condoms can vary in length by up to 20% and in width by 12%. If penises come in all shapes and sizes, why shouldn't condoms? Finding the right fit could prevent it from falling off or breaking.
The head of the penis is full of nerve endings. It's extremely sensitive to pressure. And when this is covered by this little baggie, you're not going to get as much of that sensation.
But condoms can actually make sex last longer. The condom can have a tourniquet effect, pressing on the veins at the base of a penis, postponing a man's orgasm. New condoms made from polyurethane claim to give a better sensation than traditional condoms. They're plastic instead of rubber, and the material is so strong the condom can be thinner. Most condoms are just a fraction of an inch thick, or about the width of 2 hairs. The thinner a condom is, the better it can transfer heat from the penis to the vagina. Walter Masanik runs the Janssen Ortho Birth Control Museum in Toronto. It's the only birth control museum in the world. As early as 1550 BC, an Egyptian papyrus described an ancient birth control tampon made from cotton, ground dates, honey, acacia, and, crocodile dung.
But what they did not know was that under the influences of body temperatures and fluids, the acacia goes through a fermentation process and converts to lactic acid. And lactic acid is an ingredient of the modern-day spermicide.
It seems just about every method of birth control we use today is steeped in tradition.
The women in Constantinople, if we were to go back 1,000 years, took sea sponges, removed as much of the sand as they possibly could, and then dipped it into lemon juice. So it was the citric acid, the acidity of the lemon, that killed the sperm. Now, we can jump ahead a few hundred years and get about the middle of the 1700s, and there we come across the great lover Casanova. He too took a lemon, cut it in half, removed the pulp, and inserted that up against the uterus. So you have the occlusive nature of the lemon rind. Also, you have the acidity of the citric acid, which killed the sperm.
Lemon rinds as a cervical cap. Crude, but it worked. Another very efficient method of birth control is the IUD, the intrauterine device. When different kinds of coils are placed in the uterus, they agitate the lining so an egg cannot implant. The idea first appeared in medical books in 1901, but it was in practice long before that.
Let's go back thousands of years. During the time of the large crossings in the desert with the caravan, one of the concerns that caravan owners had was that if the female camel became pregnant, she would simply sit down and would not move. So the suggestion was made, roll up your sleeves, take a little pebble, insert that into the uterus of the camel. Therefore, there's the foreign object, and should that camel have intercourse with a male camel, of course, the egg just passed through.
The invention of the birth control pill has been heralded by some as one of the greatest achievements of the 20th century. Each pill contains a cocktail of synthetic hormones. The hormones trick a woman's body into thinking she's pregnant. This stops the ovaries from releasing eggs. For those women who want to exert some control over their body's cycle, there's one way to stop it altogether. By continuing to take their pills without any break, they can postpone their periods indefinitely.
Women have long regulated their menstrual cycles with oral contraceptives. Many women, if they're going somewhere on a weekend and don't want to have their withdrawal bleeding at that time, will continue to take their estrogen during the weekend and then withdraw after that.
But even the modern pill can't stake claim to the concept of preventing pregnancy by manipulating hormones. First Nations women in Canada made tea from crushed beaver testicles. It's thought the testosterone from the testicles disrupted their cycles.
There's nothing new in this old world, but what we've been able to do is to improve on the efficacy and package it a little better.
When it comes to birth control, we expect science to make our lives as easy as possible.
And wouldn't it be wonderful if you could just push a button and that would trigger your menstrual period, and then push another button and you would ovulate?
In the next few years, the birth control you'll be driving won't be high-tech, bright, shiny, and new. The design will be simply more of the same, but better. The pill has been so successful, a lot of contraception research deals with improving on the chemical cocktail.
What they're trying to get away from is the woman having to remember to take a pill every day. And a couple of things that I see down on the horizon, for example, is a patch that you would change once a week, and then you'd use it for 3 weeks and 1 week off sort of thing. And the other thing that's definitely going to be on the horizon is a vaginal ring, which has the estrogen and the progestin, which the patch will too, both an estrogen and progestin. But the difference between that is the vaginal ring goes in the vagina, and it would stay there 21 days and then out 7 days, so there'd be a withdrawal bleed, and then back in for 21 days. I've heard of plugs, polyethylene plugs that you'd put in the tubes, but we know tubes, as gynecologists, we know tubes damage very easily, and you pull those out, there's no guarantee there's not damage left behind and they're infertile.
While science continues to scrutinize the sperm and the egg, there could be a new method of birth control, one that's hidden inside us all.
Some researchers are working on the immune system to fight conception, basically. So what they're working at is they're looking at antibodies that they inject into the system, and those antibodies will basically counteract or inhibit the action of the natural hormones within the body and therefore act as a contraceptive.
In women, the idea is that an antibody would disarm hormones that are essential for the implantation of the egg in the uterus. In men, the antibody could attack a protein on the head of the sperm, killing the sperm. Theoretically, using the body's immune system to fight conception should work.
The one thing nice about antibodies is that it's like a lock and key. So if you make it against a specific protein or a specific site, it really shouldn't touch anything else.
We do have the technology to produce keys that can unlock or stop pregnancies from occurring, but the technology doesn't produce keys that are custom-tailored enough to ensure they won't unlock other doors as well.
One of the problems is if it actually goes to the ovary, it may attack all the eggs, and if it attacks all the eggs, then it's going to be what would cause what we call premature ovarian failure. So not only will the women not be able to have eggs, they may not have hormones.
No hormones means early menopause, so the risks are huge, which is why many scientists say the future of birth control may not be as high-tech as we think.
I think we will make a lot of progress to perhaps use even more natural methods of contraception.
Recently, one of the most innovative ways of controlling fertility to hit the market had nothing to do with antibodies, hormones, or latex.
It's very simple. You're basically looking at a lens and a slide, like a microscope, and a little bit of spit.
Spit? Yep. That's the secret behind a new wave of fertility indicators like the Luna, now on the market. Legally, they can't be sold as birth control because they don't prevent pregnancy on their own. The kits allow a woman to figure out her cycle so she knows when not to have sex and therefore avoid pregnancy.
Basically, what you would do is first thing in the morning, before you've changed any of the saliva in your mouth, take a drop of saliva, place it on the slide part of the Luna, set it down, give it about 10 minutes to dry.
Then under natural lighting, focus the microscope part of the unit to identify the pattern. When a woman is not fertile, the pattern on the slide will look like this, black dots. On her most fertile day, the pattern looks like leaves of a fern. Any sign of the fern pattern means the stork is circling overhead.
During a woman's cycle, as the estrogen rises, it increases the salt content of the saliva and the cervical mucus. So when we take the saliva out and let it dry, what we're actually seeing is salt crystals precipitating out of the saliva.
This increase in salt during a woman's fertile phase is caused by the increasing pH in her vagina. Usually the vagina is fairly acidic, but around ovulation, the fluids become less acidic, making it more hospitable to sperm. If used correctly, Luna says its device can tell you when to abstain from intercourse to prevent pregnancy, and it boasts it's almost as effective as the pill. So the future of birth control could mean becoming intimate with your own saliva, or the future might be hiding right in your own backyard. Tucked into the hillside in North Carolina is a garden. This garden could be the birth control clinic of the future. The plants grown here have been controlling women's fertility for thousands of years.
In each woman's yard, in the fields around her, or even the flower pots in her urban home, are capable of being grown the kind of plants that are effective and safe in family planning.
John Riddle is a professor of history at North Carolina State University. He wants science to wake up to the secrets of natural contraceptives instead of blowing them away. Riddle is building a compelling case that humans may be able to put fertility in the hands of sticks, seeds, and leaves. Take Queen Anne's lace. Seeds from the common weed have been gobbled up since Hippocrates first wrote about its birth control effects.
Queen Anne's lace is a postcordial interceptor. That is to say, its seeds disrupt the estrogen cycle. It acts as a progesterone inhibitor, which is a scientific way of saying that it prevents implantation. And so it's, in effect, the morning after pill.
The weed is still used by women in India. While no human studies have been conducted, the animal studies are eye-opening.
With mice, it's 100% effective.
Riddle has researched everything from writings and recipes to demographic studies to see how our ancestors used contraceptive plants.
What we know on the basis primarily of Roman records is that women were having fewer and fewer children.
If a woman didn't want to become pregnant, she would simply make some of these plants part of her diet, much like how we eat salads today. One of Riddle's favorite plants is the chaste tree, a tree commonly used in ancient Greece.
The reason it's fascinating is that it is both a male contraceptive and a female contraceptive. In mice studies, the chaste plant fed to female rats shows that it is 100% effective in preventing implantation. Now, when it is fed to dogs, it is 100% effective in preventing spermatogenesis, production of sperm.
Today, we don't give these plants a second look. Perhaps we should. Eat the willow, the rats don't get pregnant. The juniper stimulates the lining of the uterus, preventing implantation. The pomegranate somehow toys with females' estrogen levels and therefore their ovulation.
Plants have a way of disrupting reproduction of animals that are grazing on them. And it was probably through this means that the ancients first saw what was happening to animals and started using it for their own purposes.
So animal studies have shown that plants can prevent pregnancy. But exactly how and the long-term effects on humans remain unknown.
What we have not done is take the next step, and that is to say modern science to use its very considerable genius and skills in order to study exactly what are the effects on humans.
The future of birth control and aphrodisiacs will continue to be driven by technology, ingenuity, and experimentation. With an arsenal of potions and science at his or her disposal, humans today are better equipped to face the age-old question, to conceive or not to conceive. The big question is what to choose, pheromone perfumes or ginseng tea, high-tech immune therapy or the good old condom. With countless options, the future of the egg and the sperm dangles in the balance.
You're watching Discovery Health Channel, a network of Discovery Communications Incorporated and Alliance Atlantis.